I was attacked from behind, punched in the back of the head by a man roughly 80 pounds heavier than me and taller. I died, my skull cracked on the pavement, and cerebrospinal fluid leaked out in copious amounts. Several minutes later, after my actual death experience, my heart started back up again on its own. These videos and my life have been about overcoming great adversity. Now I have several areas of traumatic brain injury. These videos are aimed at all people because at some time we all face great adversity, don't we? Leslie often gets the Me Too reaction to her memory issues. However, those people can't really say Me Too because they haven't had a brain hemorrhage like Leslie has. And again, it's presumption and assumption because they aren't similar. Kerry said that people often talk down to her or try to convince her that something happened that she knows for a fact didn't happen. And I have this too, but rarer, where for the most part, things that strike me as important, I almost always remember. It's just the vast majority of other things. Sometimes they are things that I would want to remember, but yeah, I get you. You know when people are bullshitting and trying to manipulate you because they're hoping they can convince you that they're not lying, but because those people haven't experienced it, you see straight through the bullshit. Megs said that people don't get why she's suddenly so blunt or doesn't show emotion, and both of those things, from what I have researched, are very common too. So thank you for your comment, Megs. Memory, people questioning memory keeps returning, as does the whole, oh, me too. What other people need to understand, and then back off, they need to understand that just because you've had a sprained ankle or jarred your foot, that doesn't mean that you're an expert on having a spiral fracture of your femur or having an amputation. They're not the same things. With people saying, oh yeah, me too, there's a slight slope on the way back from the supermarket or the grocery store. And that person who's just said that is talking to someone who almost died climbing up Mount Everest. You know? Unbelievable. Heather brought up a great point that people often try to manipulate what is an indisputable reason into an excuse. But don't be reckless of what you believe is your confidence. Because if you're wrong, that's a hell of a fucking gamble. Because if you're wrong and you're treating this person badly, you're just being a terrible fucking human. Someone who is willing to make that gamble, again, is telling you something about them. Okay, thank you to Deborah, Leslie, Aaron, Meredith, Janet, Jodie, Nikki, Melinda, and Debbie, who have all made comments along the lines of memory issues, Me Too, getting questioned when people say, but you look fine. And then you reply to that person, but you've not had 1 second of medical training, let alone 7 to 11 years. So you look fine too, but you sound like a fucking mean arsehole, frankly. Emily brought up a very similar issue, big issue to me, that Emily feels she can't handle stress anymore. But anyone who's struggling with that too, I've had a lot of help with counselling, therapy with that, but also researching how to deal with stress online. I'm very particular with what I deem as a good source, but there's plenty of really good free resources and information on YouTube and on the internet itself on exercises that can really help with stress. I mean, meditation and yoga is the one thing I'd start with. And the great thing about those things, you can start with like 1 or 2 or 3 minutes on either of those and then just gradually build up. You can even spend 6 months doing a minute a day. I would encourage you to gradually build up every week maybe from a minute to a minute and a half, and then within a few weeks, 3 minutes a day. Colin and Jasmine brought up that the gist of which is that they often feel like they're being treated as though they're stupid, or as if they're now subordinate because of their brain injury. And this is a big issue because I don't really see any accuracy in movies and TV about... There's clearly no research been done in the last few decades on what actually happens to a person post significant brain injury. It's always a small selection of they're in a coma for the rest of their life, or they're catatonic, or their intelligence is greatly reduced, or they're simple. And actually, coma often happens, significant traumatic brain injuries, but the rest, I haven't seen any evidence of those at all. Yeah, that's why research and not cutting corners or bullshitting or just guessing is ever okay. And that goes for writers, because that started like a cigarette being tossed into a jungle with movie writers and TV writers, but it became a wildfire that consumed most of the planet, because that's why most people think you're going to be stupid post brain injury, or your faculties are diminished, or and it's fucking bollocks. And my own research has shown me that there is zero reason to think that, and zero evidence. I mean, the only guess is it's the coma, or they heard it or read it in a newspaper. But yeah, comas do happen a lot, but the rest that's been popularised as the result of brain injuries is reprehensible. But think about the gigantic knock-on effect that's had on all of us. It's just fucking unacceptable, but those mistakes have been made now. But what we need to do is fix it. It needs to be fixed, and at least writers are getting a hell of a lot better with their research and all that kind of stuff. Okay, Nat has said that her driving licence was cancelled medically post her traumatic brain injury, and that most of the time, if she doesn't use a walker, when she's having Nat didn't say this, but this is my own interpretation, but Nat said that when she has what I personally, James speaking here, would call a good brain day, Nat says that's when she gets most amount of lying accusations. Nat also expressed that she's really impulsive post TBI. Nat also expressed that people seem to, again, this is from my perspective of what you said, Nat. From her perspective, Nat said that people seem to pick and choose when she has her faculties and when she doesn't. My impression is, from your perspective, Nat, that it seems quite convenient that you only seem to have your faculties when it suits other people. Whenever she says something intelligent, Nat also seemed to express that people really go, ha, bullshit. So I've talked about this before, but when I went to Crown Court, which is criminal court, so the person who assaulted me, who attacked me from behind, was getting sentenced, I wrote 2 victim impact statements. And I thought, I was always really, sounds immodest, but a very bright person. And I'm lucky, it's a miracle, and doctors have touched on that, particularly the private doctor my work paid for, that I was really lucky that one of the multiple areas of TBI didn't affect my speech, because, but it is most common, from what I understand, that your intelligence level doesn't really change much. But all the problems we have might seem to do with intelligence. They're not, but I actually blame movies, which is annoying for me because I love film. I'm a huge film buff, but
whenever I see, you know, brain damage or people just carelessly knocking people out because they're trying to help them, it's like, you've just fucked that person up for the rest of their life. And, you know, I'm watching it on Lost at the moment. Every other episode, it seems to be like John Locke, who's, for most of it, you know, a good guy, will just knock someone out because he wants to help them. And it's like, you just possibly given that person a disability for the rest of their lives, but really, in the early noughties, there really was a lot less understanding than now. Anyway, oh yeah, so back to the judge thing. So I was afraid expressing my intelligence, but I thought, no, being honest is something I've seen tangibly leads to good things, and it takes courage, and that's the bigger reason why being as honest as possible has become such an important thing to me, because I used to have chronic anxiety from when I was, you know, a teenager, and it took many years to overcome that. And looking fear in the eyes, doing brave things, obviously makes things better too. So it came about from that. But I really appreciated when I really didn't want to do it, and I had to read out 1,600 words, just over. And the judge, who was the poshest man I have ever met, and that's saying something, because I'm a former professional Shakespearean trained actor, he turned to me and he said, I think he did have that wig on, but my memory's fucked, so, but I think he did, not sure, I think he did. Anyway, he turned to me and said, I am profoundly thankful to you. You are patently an eloquent and incredibly intelligent young man. The only bit that's not true is the young bit. I just got good genes. I'm 35. I know, what's that? I look late 20s. Thank you. You're too kind. What? And I'm really good looking. Oh, okay, I realised no one's actually saying that. Oh man, my ego. Help yourself. But it made me feel better because he's a judge. He's a barrister and he's a Crown Court judge. Well, I think currently he's actually a recorder. These kinds of injuries in a long career. And he kept saying, basically, that he could not believe I wasn't dead. And he kept making a point that this should be, how this is not a murder or a manslaughter case, which is accidental killing of another human being in England and Britain. That's what it's called. He kept saying that, and it made me feel so much better, because before that, you just doubt. And doubt is still a big part of that, but that made me feel a hell of a lot fucking better. It really did. Because he made it clear that he's aware of all my complaints, because I listed them all, everything I go through, my disabilities. And he understood that. He understood that it's quite rare for intelligence to be impacted, and I guess he was commending me my courage as well. Yeah, and I always know courage, because you know if you're being courageous because you feel afraid before you make a decision to be brave. And I was stressed and angry because I'd been told originally I wouldn't have to read out my victim impact statement, and then last minute they sprung it on me and I went for a piss. I thought, no, the way I've got to where I have with overcoming chronic anxiety and becoming a professional actor many years before is by looking fear in the eye, doing the thing that I don't want to do. But it was mainly in that situation because I've been made completely unprepared by otherwise very helpful Hampshire police, actually. Incredibly helpful, actually. But that did wrong foot me, because the detective said, oh, actually, no, you won't have to read out your victim impact statement. And then 10 minutes before we meant to go into court, it's like, you're going to have to read out the whole over 1,600 word thing. And I was like, fuck my life.